Oh, okay. I don't see claim host. I see them more.
Now.
Yeah, now it's that button disappears since
oh, now it says I'm the host now. All right.
Yeah.
So I think Renata. Thank you, Renata.
Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Renata. Can you guys see my screen? Does it say making career moves?
Yes.
Yeah, looks good.
Yes.
Okay, great. Should we, we're gonna wait a few minutes, Renata?
Yes. Let's give people a minute. Maybe another minute or so.
That's weird. I can't see the chat. It worked before when I tested it before. I could see the chat. Show the chat. Oh, there it is. Okay, there's the chat. Let's bring up the presentation again. So it was hidden underneath.
You can start. Jeanette, are you there?
Make this smaller. This smaller. Perfect. Got everything now. We got people, chat, and the presentation. You guys can probably hear me.
Yes. I think we're good to start. Jeanette, do you want to start with the intro for the club?
Yeah, what time is it? 12:03? Yeah. I would love to start. I'm Jeanette Siborowski. I'm president of the Silicon Valley University of Michigan Alumni Group, and we're really excited to have you all. And we know that there's still people coming in to join us for this event. One thing that we're really excited about this week is just earlier this week on Wednesday, the Alumni Association awarded us the Award of Excellence for Mid-Size Club. And so part of that is, of course, having great events like this and having everyone come and participate. So we're happy to have you all here. And I'll hand it over to Renata now.
Thank you, everyone, for participating, and thanks, Alex, for being presenting today. So we are very excited to have you here. So Alex Chen is a social media and entertainment executive in Silicon Valley. He's currently working as a patent counsel at TikTok, and prior to that, he worked at Facebook, Walt Disney, HTC, and Qualcomm. So today he's going to be talking about making career moves. We're super excited about that. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to add in the chat. We're going to also have opportunities for you guys to ask your questions live. We want to make this very engaging and a good experience for all of you. So Alex, to you.
Yeah, let me, I lost the chat again. The chat seems to want to disappear on me, so I want to be able to see the chat. Okay, let's do this again. Here we go. All right, happy Friday, everybody. So for those of us who are Michigan alumni, we we sing hail to the victors and leaders in the best. And I'm grateful that God has given me opportunity to work at some of the top, let's see here, go back to here, this is great. So yeah, I'm grateful that God's given me opportunity to work at Qualcomm, the #1 wireless company, Disney, the top media entertainment company, Facebook, the top social media company, TikTok, the #1 short form video company. That's all I'm going to say about myself. I want to spend this next hour to talk about how I can help you. So I'm excited to share some things I learned with you, and think of me as executive coach for the next 50 minutes. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will pause probably 3 times during the presentation and answer questions. So as an attorney, I have to start a disclaimer. This is all my personal opinion. I'm not representing any company. And also, by attending this presentation, all of you agree to make a TikTok video with me after the presentation. Just kidding, maybe not. So here's the agenda. 4 topics, 4 areas. Why now? Why should we think about a career change now or start preparing? And career stages, when you're coming out of college to being working in the workforce, and to being a senior, somebody who's senior, and job hunting and career tips. So why now? This year has been, we've seen a lot of unprecedented change in the economy. A lot of companies, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's companies laying employees off. There are companies that are shutting down, going bankrupt. But there are also some opportunities, and I'm going to talk about the opportunities today. TikTok, for one, is hiring 10,000 employees. There's another article that said TikTok may be hiring 20,000 employees over the next 3 years. And there are social media companies that are hiring software companies. Tech companies especially are hiring, not just software developers. They're hiring marketing, finance, HR, public relations, brand management. And one interesting opportunity I saw at Micron, which is a semiconductor here in Silicon Valley, they have a position open for a social media director. And I thought it was really fascinating that a semiconductor company wants to expand its presence in social media. So there's a lot of possibilities out there, and I'm going to talk about them in the next few slides. So hot technologies. What are some hot technologies? E-commerce is very big this year. Everyone's staying at home, so there's a lot of companies selling their products and services online. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. So data analysis and predictions, anything that relates to machine learning and predictions is really hot. Companies just can't hire fast enough. 5G is also rolling out. It's been delayed by COVID-19, but it is rolling out. You can buy 5G phones now. The networks they have 5G equipment. So there's more and more applications of 5G that are coming out in the next year. So that's going to be an exciting area. And self-driving cars. So if you don't live in Silicon Valley, you haven't seen, I just moved up here last year. There are self-driving cars everywhere. There's even little robots that go down the street in Mountain View that take your food order and deliver food to you. So there's a lot of automation, robotics, and self-driving. Tesla cars now you can put it in almost fully autonomous mode, and it just doesn't, some of the laws don't recognize stop signs and speed lights. Don't let cars do that yet, but the technology is there, the sensors there. And I thought about adding augmented reality and virtual reality, also known as AR, VR, to this list, but I think it's going to take a few more years for that technology to mature. It's a niche market right now, but I think it's going to expand in the next few years. And as far as cities that people may be looking for jobs, I think Seattle, Austin, and all the Silicon Valley area, which is Palo Alto, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and San Jose. It seems like there's a lot of jobs, a lot of companies hiring these areas. Another thing we've seen a lot of change this year is government regulation and compliance, and just antitrust is something that we've seen, but there's a lot of, so privacy is a very, very hot area. I've seen some people that graduate college and even law school and business school, they knew nothing about privacy, but they've all switched to privacy. So it's a very hot area. companies just can't hire enough people in privacy. TikTok, Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, they're all hiring people in privacy. Also, data security is another hot area. Content moderation is, so TikTok, Facebook, Google, they have to moderate their content, which means they have to look for things that are violent. They have to look for things that may be threatening to people. So that's content moderation. That is also a hot area. And like I said, antitrust, I probably would add antitrust to this area because now big tech companies, the big 4 or 5 tech companies are under a lot of scrutiny by the government. So I'll pause right there. I don't see any questions and I will keep going. If anybody has a question, feel free to type it in the chat. Let's make this interactive. So this is your career. What does your career look like? Everyone's career is different. So on the left, I have job satisfaction and responsibility. And if you're lucky, maybe your career looks like this. It's a straight line up, but that's not everybody has that. I know one friend of mine at Warner Brothers, he's been there 20 years and now he's a senior vice president and he manages 30 people. His career might look like this. It might look like a straight line, but maybe your career looks like this. And there's ups and downs, plateaus. So this is more typical, I would say. And my career is certainly like this. It's up and downs and some plateaus. The plateaus would be companies where you kind of reach a comfortable level, you know the people, you know your work, and maybe you're not growing as fast. So that's what a plateau. Or your career could be any shape or size. And this little loop here, I've seen some people leave a company and come back to the company they worked at. So that's a lesson to never burn bridges. Whenever you leave a company, try to be very friendly and respectful. Make sure you leave on good terms. You may come back to that company. So that's one lesson that I learned, and I hope you learn as well. So this graph is something I learned this year when I was looking for a job. Job hunting and looking for other opportunities. On the left, we have job opportunities. And on the bottom axis, we have years of experience out of college. So for those of you who, so there might be some people on this call who are in college and people who recently graduated college. And I would say the prime years that there's a lot of job opportunities are 3 to 8 years, maybe 3 to 10 years. Then there's, when you reach about 10 to 15 years experience, it's kind of a plateau. And this is not true for every industry. You know, every industry is a little bit different. So this is just what I've seen in jobs and in the legal market. And then after about 15 years, 20 years, there's a dip, there's a decline. The number of job opportunities goes down. So both at Disney and at Facebook, I've seen attorneys who have 20 years, 25 years experience apply for jobs that they're way overqualified. Their jobs are for people with 3 to 5 years experience. And I think this is true in other industries. So I think the lesson to be learned here is that you have a lot of opportunities, but don't take them for granted. When you're from 0 to 10 years out of college or grad school, try to, and I'm going to get into this in later slides, some of my advice in later slides. Try to take advantage of all the opportunity, try to get as much experience as you can, because it's harder to find a job after you're 15, 20 years out of college and grad school. It's harder to find a job. I see some questions. Let's see here. In the spirit of networking, I work in healthcare. Okay, that's not a question. How do we change this trend, particularly when we are working longer and often change careers? Yeah, this is interesting. So I've got a load of career tips coming up in my next slide. So we'll talk about this. And yeah, so we'll definitely we'll dig into this. So career stages, 0 to 5 years. So some of the people in this audience are 0 to 5 years out of college or grad school. One thing I would say is try to delay gratification. And, you know, this generation, the last few generations, we want things now. We want instant gratification. We want to take vacations. We want, you know, to buy cars, nice cars. We want watches. There's a guy named Gary V on TikTok, and he talks about delaying gratification. It's pretty interesting. He says he doesn't have, when he was out of high school, I think he did not have a fancy watch, he didn't have a car, but he was just saving money and investing, and made a lot of money. So try to work hard now and cut out video games, Netflix. And it's hard, but that's one thing that some people have said. Seek diverse experience, which I think is really important. And this is something, so these lessons I'm giving you, some of these I learned right on time, and some of them I made mistakes and I learned them late. Some people told me late, and I said to myself, gosh, I wish I learned that earlier in my career. So I'm giving you everything here. So seek diverse experience, try to work in a lot of different areas. Don't just focus on one area that you're good at. Try to branch out, try to challenge yourself and look at other things that you can work on. And take risks. Don't be afraid to take risks. You know, for me, I was pretty conservative during my 0 to 5 years. I worked at big law firms. And so I did not take risks. And I saw other people taking risks. They joined startups. They did other things. So don't be afraid to take risks 0 to 5 years. Just try to get as much experience as you can. So 6 to 10 years out of college or grad school. Try to lead some projects, lead some teams, look for opportunities to lead things. You don't have to be a manager yet. It'd be great if you're a manager, but if you're not, just try to take the lead in certain projects and teams. Network as much as you can. Of course, you know, throughout your whole career, networking is important. But I think in this middle stage of your career, it's still early in your career, networking is really important because you're going to need your network later in your career. And develop executive presence. And some of you probably hear the dreaded words, you don't have executive presence. And, you know, I've heard it early in my career. So, you know, what is it? You know, there's books about it. And so I think part of it is just your brand. How do you present yourself? How do you come across to other people? You know, what you say and what you wear, how you behave in meetings. So I won't get too much into it, but these are some things that just to think about. If you're 0 to 5 years out, start thinking about these things ahead of time. So 11 to 19 years out of college or grad school. Realize that your expectations are higher, but so your employer's expectations are higher. So you have to perform at higher levels. You shouldn't be doing the same things you're doing 0 to 10 years out of college. Now your expectations are higher. The managers that hire you. So be strategic, think ahead, look at your manager, look at the people that you want to aspire to have your higher responsibility and your different role. Think about what they've done, see you know, observe and see what they've done and try to learn from them as much as you can. So 20 years out of college or grad school, you know, this is, for some of you, you may have been laid off. Some of you may be looking for better opportunity. So it's tough. You know, it's 20 years out of college looking for a job. It's tough. It's not easy. So you have to use your network as much as you can. Find your connections, seek advice, talk to them, keep learning is really important. So never stop learning, thinking you know everything. I think keep learning is really important. So there's a lot on this slide. Basically, looking at if you're comparing two companies, say you're in a good position, you've got a couple companies that you're looking at, or you're comparing your current company to a new company that there's a job opening. So when I was younger in my career, I focused on money. That's all I focused on. So compensation. And I would say, try to think about these other factors. Don't ignore these other factors. You know, it's a personal choice. But think about these other factors. You know, put down a table, write down pros and cons, talk to people, talk to your parents, talk to your family, talk to your friends. And I want to focus in on this last one, the company. So there's a lot of different sub-factors under company. There's revenue growth, profit margin. Is the company growing? Are they stagnant? What's their future look like? Startup companies, there's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of reward. And try to think about, one person told me, he said, think about the ceiling and the floor of the risk and the reward. So best case scenario, company goes IPO, your startup goes IPO, everybody becomes millionaires. And what's the floor? What's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen to your company? So it's good to consider both, and then ask tough questions for yourself. You know, don't just take your own opinion. Try to get other people's opinions. It is really, really valuable to get other people's opinions when you think about company. It's almost like the research you do is never enough. You can never reach the limit of your research. Just keep asking people. Look at, Google the companies you're looking at. Look at Glassdoor. There's a lot of comments on Glassdoor about the companies. People are unhappy about their companies. They post a ton of stuff on Glassdoor, and so in May and June of this year, I interviewed at 5 companies, and I had screening interviews at more than 5 companies, but I had second round interviews with 5 companies. And there's a ton of things you can read about these companies on Glassdoor. So people complain about everything. It's funny what people complain about. They complain about the food, they complain about the management, they complain about HR. So you can get a flavor for the company just by reading what people are posting. And so let me talk about one other thing, and I'll go to the next slide, is manager. Find out everything you can. Ask your future managers' direct reports. If you can, try to find out everything you can. Look on LinkedIn, and if that manager came from another company, see if you're connected to the people who used to report to that manager at the previous company of that manager, and then see if you can talk to them and just find out what to expect, because you want to go in having good expectations of what to expect with your manager going into a company. I'll pause there to see if there's any. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any questions, so I have the chat open, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and I will keep going. So the next few slides are going to talk about job hunting and interview tips. So I think we had a speaker, Renata, the last speaker talked about building your network. So I won't talk too much about it, but it's really critical. Your network is very powerful. Investing in your network is very powerful. I landed my job at Disney and at Facebook through my network. The manager that I reported to at Disney and Facebook were not friends of mine, but for me to find out about that opportunity, it was through my network. And also I had people pulling for me at Facebook and at Disney. I got an interview at Disney. There was a headhunter that was in Rochester, New York. And I said, no, I don't really want to go to Rochester, New York. But one of my contacts said, you need to talk to this recruiter because he's in Rochester, New York. He knows a lot of jobs, in-house jobs in California. So I called him up, and he said he had the exclusive to find a job for a position that was open at Disney. And that's how I got my job at Disney. It's one of the reasons why. So he recommended me. I interviewed, and Disney, for any job at Disney, especially at Disney Studios, they get hundreds of resumes. For any position that opens, so many people want to work at Disney. So it's just really tough. Some of these companies that I work for, there's just a lot of competition, and your network can help you. And I would say share information. So use your network, and it's a two-way street. Try to mentor some people, try to give back. If you have some information, try to share it with other people, try to help other people that they're looking for a job as well. And let me see. I got questions here. Can you speak? All right, there's got a whole bunch of questions here. Let's see. Would their direct reports be willing to share negative things about their manager? That's a good question. So this is funny. I've had some jobs where I interviewed, and I just happened to interview with somebody who was leaving that day or that week. And their they're totally willing to unload. So there's some direct reports that won't say anything bad about that manager. You're right, but if you can find the person who's leaving the company or who's grumpy, who didn't get promoted, they didn't get the raise they wanted, they're more willing to talk. So that's why I said also talk to the direct reports of the company where the manager came from. So if they're the manager that came from another company, go talk, see if you can find them on LinkedIn. And it's amazing. There's a lot of people that are willing to talk, so they'll share information. Let's see. We speak more about researching the manager beyond the company. This is the most important factor for growth and mobility once in the company. Right. Research. So I think I've addressed that about researching the manager. What's your number one? Oh, so I'll add one more thing. If you talk to the people who used to report to that manager at the previous company where that manager came from, they've got no obligations to lie to you or to stick up for their manager. If they don't like the manager, they'll drop some hints, they'll drop some clues about the manager. So talk to the people, see if you can talk to the people that worked with that manager before, and maybe even not just direct report. So sometimes you can talk to people that worked in the same department as that manager at a previous company. So yeah, I'll get to interview tips in the next few slides. I have 3 slides on that. What questions would you ask a direct report? So Notch has a good question. What question would you ask a direct report or glean insights about a hiring manager? I would say, what happens when you mess up, when you make a mistake? Ask that question. How does your manager react? Is your manager someone who helicopters in on the projects you're working on, or is your manager looking over your shoulder, like just crowding, not letting you do things, not giving you enough responsibility? How does your manager talk to you about career growth? So there's a lot of you think about it. Spend some time, think about, if you're there in that job reporting to that manager, what are some things that could come up? Mistakes, career growth, promotions, more responsibility. Those are all things that you can talk about. Signing bonus. When do you think it is most important to ask for this? Okay, that's a good question. After you get the offer. So you get the offer, you're negotiating the package. That's a good time to ask for the signing bonus. Don't ask for a signing bonus until they've given you a kind of verbal offer. They said you're the candidate they want. How do you maintain relationships over the years, particularly difficult during? So I've taken, it is tough to maintain relationships. It is tough. I would ask people for advice. There's happy hours, there's events, you can run into people, shoot them a message once in a while on LinkedIn, once a year, if you have some downtime on a Friday afternoon, try to keep in touch with people, just say, hey, how you doing? So asking for advice is a good thing, or noticing if they had a job change. So send congratulations on LinkedIn. Those are little things that you can do to have lunch with people. So even in COVID-19, I've done some happy hours, some virtual happy hours and lunches with people where you just go buy a lunch or order some DoorDash and just have lunch with people, and talk and see how people are doing. So let me go to the next thing, because people are asking about, let's see, interview tips. So I've got 3 pages of interview tips. Let's go back to this one. So the recruiter, the acquisition person. So I like this image on the right-hand side. So the previous, this is like your network. So this is the image, represents your network, all these nodes, and people are interconnected. So sometimes your contacts introduce you to your future manager or job opportunity. So it's very important to your network. Now, here we go, interview tips. This little line here on the bottom, this little dot, represents the recruiter. That recruiter is your first person you need to talk to and impress when you interview at a company. And the recruiter is really important. So once you get interviews, don't overlook the recruiter. If the recruiter makes mistakes, be patient, be friendly, as friendly as possible, because that recruiter controls who you meet, when you meet them, and the other candidates. If you can have that recruiter kind of try to have that recruiter on your side, so the recruiter is cheering for you. You want to be the candidate, the top candidate for that recruiter. Now, I've had recruiters where they mess up the interview schedule, someone doesn't appear, you have the wrong phone number, the wrong Zoom link. So be patient. Don't take it on the recruiter. The recruiter is very important. One thing happened to me. So the recruiter said, you're going to have a screening interview, a phone interview with the hiring manager. And I said to the recruiter, I said, well, I can do a Zoom call. And the recruiter said, no, it's a phone call only. So what did I do? I dressed casual. I wore like a polo shirt. I probably wasn't, I looked a little scruffy. So what happens when I get on the phone call? The hiring manager says, hey, you want to jump on a Zoom call? I'm like, oh. So when the recruiter says it's only going to be a phone call, be ready for a Zoom call, okay? Wear your jacket, get your dress shirt, look presentable, look nice, because that phone call can turn into a Zoom call. So the I think it's a lesson to always be prepared. Just prepare for things. Even when the recruiter says it's a phone call only, no Zoom call, don't even ask for Zoom call. It could be a Zoom call. And you'll notice when you interview, the recruiter says, are you interviewing at other companies? I don't want people to lie, but if you are, you want to tell people. You say, yes, I am interviewing at other companies. And they seem to have a playbook. That seemed to with the recruiter, you can tell them where you are with the other companies. You can tell them that, look, I'm interviewing with your company and this other company. If I had both offers, this actually happened to me. This actually happened to me. So I interviewed at 5 companies in 3 weeks. I interviewed with over 25 people. I think it was like 28 people. So constantly talking to people, and that worked well for me because there's 3 companies that are seriously considering me. I got down to the final 2. I was one of the final 2 candidates at 3 companies. And so that worked well, where the companies are a little bit competing with each other and trying to expedite my interviews to accommodate that. Let's see, I'm going to stop here and look at the questions. When you maintain relationships over the years. Yeah, I think I answered that. How do you find the best recruiters? What I mean by recruiters, they're not, I'm not talking about the headhunters. So headhunters, I'm talking about the people that actually work at the company. So if I'm interviewing at TikTok, I'm talking about the person who works at TikTok and their job is to recruit people. So they call them talent acquisition. And there's other names for it. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, the recruiter is at the company. So I guess it's more appropriate to call them talent acquisition. That's what they call themselves now, the department. And they run the gamut. So you have to be prepared. Some recruiters that work at the company, they speak perfect English. They're very cordial, they're very respectful. I've had some recruiters who I met at the company, and they're the first person you talk to at the company. So sometimes their English is not great. It's hard for me to understand what they're saying. I've had recruiters that work at companies where I ask for information and they're a little bit defensive when I ask for information. They're like, why do you want to know that? I would ask for information, who am I going to be talking to? Who's the next person on my schedule? And sometimes they're a little bit defensive. So you have to just kind of roll with it. You have to, maybe they're having a bad day, but you have to still treat them with, be as friendly as possible and be patient with them. So we're doing virtual interviews now. And if you have another computer screen, or if you have some paper, you can prepare as much as you can for the questions that they're going to ask you. And I would write it out, think about it, talk to other people, do some mock interviews. This is like, this question's coming, right? If you got laid off, then there's nothing you can say. It's totally fine. Companies are downsizing right now. Departments are downsizing. So if you got laid off, that's, there's nothing more to say. But if you're working at a company and you didn't get laid off, they're going to ask you, why do you want to leave your company? And think about that answer. Think about what your answer is. So I would suggest, and I've talked to a lot of different people about this, don't say anything bad about your company, no matter what. It could just, you could be stuck in a bizarre world. Your company is just, there's infighting. It could be, whatever things are going on in your company. You can say that I'm looking for this experience, and right now in my current role, I don't have this experience. And so when I say that, one of the recruiters I talked to, she said, that's it. That's the only answer I would accept from you. And if you had said anything else, I would have said, okay, we're not interested. So looking for experience that's not at your company, some responsibility that you want, or you want some career growth, something that's attractive about the new position you're in for is pretty much the only thing some recruiters will want to hear. Insufficient room for answer. Let me look at these questions here. Okay. Wow. Questions are coming in good. So I thought is it advantageous to work with headhunters? I got my job at Disney working through a headhunter, and he had a relationship with the hiring manager because he got the hiring manager at Disney, his job there at Disney. So I guess there's pros and cons to working with a headhunter. I don't want to say that there's a definitive answer. If you work with a headhunter that you trust, I've also met some headhunters that if you do one little thing wrong, then they won't talk to you again. If you don't disclose something, if you applied for a position and then the headhunter contacts you and you think that the company hired that headhunter to contact you, but then they didn't, that headhunter never called me back. So it's a little bit tricky. I think there's good ones and there's bad ones. So it's do they share their record of placement? Some of them do. Yeah, some of them share their record placement. So I would say it's mixed. I would say try them out, and if you can get a referral, if you can hear from other people who use that headhunter, that might be good, and go with that. Go with what people say. Suppose you get a job offered from a company that's willing to pay higher than your current job. How do you use that to try to skillfully raise your compensation in your current job? I don't leave. Yeah. Well, so then you have to look at, so this question from Rahul is a good one. I think you need to look at all four of those factors. So the responsibility, the company, your growth, is your career growing? How's your relationship with your manager? And I think I wouldn't just leave a company for money. I think with my younger self, earlier in my career, I would say I just left companies, I left law firms for more money. But look at the people you work with. Look with your manager, your peers. Are you getting opportunities? Is your career growing? Are you learning new things? Do you like the location you're working at? And how stable is the company you're working at and the company that, so there's a lot of factors to think about. And it is okay to talk to your manager. I think it also look at the relationship you have with your manager. It is okay to talk about compensation and say, look, I got this, I think my salary is a little bit below market. You can talk to either your manager or talk to your HR business partner. Those are some things that at Facebook and TikTok, they encourage us to have those conversations. At Disney, some of the groups have open conversations about salary and compensation. Some do not. So you kind of have to see. Standard answer. So this is Gregory's. Insufficient room for advancement. Yeah, I've used that. I think that's acceptable. if there are two companies that you interviewed for, where the first company accepts you, but the second is still interviewing, and you want to wait the results of the second company, what is the best way to ask the first company for more time without seeming dismissive? Okay, so this is from Yeri Sean. That exact scenario happened to me. I got an offer in hand, and I was trying to get another company to expedite things, move it, try to get the other offer. And there was like a 7-day period where I was just kind of torn. I got a good offer. It wasn't great. I got a good offer in hand, and I was expecting, I wanted to get a much better offer. So it's a little bit tricky. I would say try to be honest, just try to be upfront, honest, and humble with both companies, both the talent acquisition people at both companies, and just try to tell them, look, I have an offer from this other company, or they've told me it's coming, or I'm in the final interview. They're down to 2 candidates. So I think having that gradual conversation earlier is better than just dropping the ball. So if you interviewed for 3 weeks and then you talk to the recruiter for the very first time and mention that you're interviewing another company, it seems a little odd. So right from the beginning, right from the get-go, I would say tell them that you're interviewing other companies. So keep communication open, kind of get a feel for your recruiter, the talent acquisition person you're working with at the companies. Do they like updates every 3 days? Do they like an update when something significant happens? Most of them do, because most of them, I think, at least the tech companies in Silicon Valley, they're trained to pick up on that. They're trained to compete for the best talent, the highest talent. So they're in, Google, TikTok, Facebook, Amazon, these companies, you have also Microsoft and Apple, they're all competing against each other. So that they're very keen on beating the other companies to give an offer and try to give the best offer and try to offer, the best compensation package, the best responsibilities, things like that. So they just try to be open and honest with the people up front. Good resources for finding headhunters. I don't know. It's a good question. What do you think about lateral move within the same company compared to switching a new job? Yes, definitely. If you can do that before you leave your company. If you work at a good company, you like the growth of your company, the profit margin, the revenue growth, you like your some of the people you work with at that company, yeah, look for a lateral move. Definitely. I would encourage you to look for a lateral move. All right, let's keep going. Thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. Why do you want this job? So they're testing your motivation. How badly do you want this job? Why are you the best candidate? So this question, definitely think about this. Think about how you're going to respond to this question. And your answer to this question is different for each company, right? For each role you're interviewing for, it's not the same standard typical answer you're going to give. Your answer is going to be different for each company that you interview at. So think about it, write it out, talk to people, practice with people, do some mock interviews, maybe with your friends. I have a friend that I go biking with, and we discuss these questions. As we're biking, I didn't ask him to play the hiring manager, but I said, what do you think about this answer? And I was just bouncing ideas off with him. What do you think about this answer? What do you think about this? Should I say this? And just do that with a friend of yours. Have coffee. These days with COVID, just do a Zoom call. See if you can do a Zoom call and ask them, how does this answer sound to you? If you're the hiring manager or the recruiter, how does this answer sound to you? And then inevitably, somebody you interview with is going to ask you a question about something you haven't done before, right? So I learned this lesson in one interview. So you learn from every single interview. Every single interview you're learning, you're collecting information. So one interview they asked me if I did this before, and I said, I haven't done that. Have you done X? No, I haven't done X. And I stopped, I paused. Then the hiring manager said, well, you want to learn, don't you? Don't you want to learn? And I said, yes, of course I want to learn. So I didn't get a call back from that. And I learned from that interview. So my next interview, they asked me, have you done X or Y, whatever? I said, no, I haven't done that before. You gotta be honest if you've done it before or not. I haven't done that before, but I'm eager to learn. Maybe I'm taking some courses. I'm looking at LinkedIn. I'm doing some research in that area. So point to some things where you're eager to learn. Worst case scenario, write it down. So write it down so it shows that, and that's one of my tips coming up on the next slide, is if you're in an interview, write things down. It shows your willingness to learn. Let's see if it's the next one here. Yeah, so be humble. Managers want a team player. They want someone that fits in their team, a good fit. They don't want a cowboy, a rodeo, you know, they don't want someone who's a lone ranger who wants all the credit. Take notes. So here's the one I just talked about. It shows respect, it shows willingness to learn. And I'll give you a very quick story. I know we're at 14 minutes. A few months ago, I met a attorney. He was ranked the #1 patent litigator in the country by magazine. And I looked up, there's another article that ranked him in the top 10 8 years ago. So he worked at the #1 patent litigation law firm in the country. And he was the #1 patent litigator in the country by himself. So my first meeting with him, he was taking notes. He was taking notes of things that I was saying. And that just struck me as like, wow, this guy is still willing to learn. He's still, you know, humble and respectful, and he's willing to learn. And that's really attractive. So I think to hiring managers, that's a really attractive trait. If you're, and I do this, I try to do this in every single interview. I'm taking notes, but I know that if you're on a Zoom call, you probably don't want to be banging away on your keyboard. So try to find a keyboard that's got the soft pads, or take notes, you know, handwritten notes in a pad. So I think taking notes shows respect. And also, if you have a mentor that you're talking to, if you have a mentor, really taking notes, I would highly recommend it, because it shows that you want to learn, shows that you are learning. If you're a mentor, and I've been on both sides of this, I've been the mentor and the mentee. If you're a mentee and you're not taking notes, the mentor can say, well, this guy's wasting my time. You know, this person's wasting my time. So definitely try to take notes. They say it activates a different part of your brain. So, you know, normally a conversation, you might remember the beginning of it and you might remember the end of it, and you'll forget the rest. So taking notes helps you capture a lot of different things. Okay, let's see. Questions to ask when it's your turn. The turn question. Let's see here. What are good sources to find? Okay, answer that one. The question of why do you want this job? Should they be asking that early on? After all, it's just like they don't know if I don't know if this is the right role. Yeah, the talent acquisition people do ask me that like right off the bat. It seems like within the first 5 or 10 minutes, they do ask me that, like, why do you want this job? What's appealing about this job? And so that's kind of the high level question, but there's a lot of questions under that. It's like, how badly do you want this job? How do you match up with the responsibilities with this job? What have you learned about this job? You know, have you done your research? So that why do you want this job? What's appealing about this job has a lot of sub elements to it that come with it. So it's important to prepare for that. Do research. If it's a company that you like, you're interested in, try to do as much research as you can, and think about that question. Think about all the ways that you can answer that question. Questions to ask when it's your turn. Yeah, so in an interview, that's a good question. Write them out. Write your questions out that you're going to ask. How do you like working at the company? So at a very high level, the questions that you ask to the talent acquisition person and the hiring manager and the people on the team when it's your turn to ask questions, and there's always 10 or 15 minutes when you get to ask questions, and sometimes even 20 minutes. Ask questions that you can't find on Google. Don't waste your time with questions you can find on Google. So the revenue of the company, anything on their LinkedIn page. So you should have their LinkedIn page printed out, all your notes on the LinkedIn page and ready to go. So don't ask them anything on that you can find out on Google or their LinkedIn page, because then it's like, okay, this person didn't do their homework. Oh, he didn't know I graduated from the University of Michigan. Oh, he didn't know that I've got a master's degree in this. So try to ask questions that that's kind of the information you gather. And then once you gather the information about the people you interview with, then think about the questions you're going to ask. What was it like working at this previous company you worked at? How would you compare this previous company to the company you're working at now? How would you describe the team culture? Because these are things that you can't learn by a Google search. These are things you can't learn from a LinkedIn search. Ask them how they like the team. Ask them what they would like to change about their company. Ask them one thing that would change about their team. Ask them what's one thing they would change about their job if they could change one thing about their job. Ask them if you're CEO of your company tomorrow, what's the first thing you would change? So that's this way, you can find out all the problems about their team, about the company, about and maybe they can't think of anything. But a lot of times, you succeeded if they say that's a good question. If they say that's a good question, so that means you're prepared. I would tell you that when I was at Facebook, my hiring manager one day after 6 months, I worked there, so 6 months or a year. I said, "Why did you hire me? Just out of curiosity, what set me apart from other candidates? We're looking at more candidates to hire." And he said, "Alex, you were very prepared. You were the most prepared candidate. You had printed out all the LinkedIn profiles of everybody you're going to interview with. You had questions. You took notes. You're like super prepared. So you're the most prepared candidate. So try to be the most prepared. It shows interest." One person, when I was at Facebook, I interviewed. Okay, looking at time, so I'm going to move on. If there's one real quick story, one person I interviewed at Facebook, on paper he looked like a great candidate. He was interviewing for a position at Facebook on our team. He looked like a great candidate, and during the phone interview, we did a Zoom call. He sounded great. Then he came in person. He didn't take any notes. He was unprepared for some of the questions we asked him, and I asked him like, how badly, why do you want this job? And he said something, his answer was something like, hey, I'm here for the San Francisco 49ers and Seahawks football game, and Facebook just paid for my ticket to come out here. And I was like, wow, the guy's honest, but, obviously he didn't get a call back after that. So, be prepared. Last thing on this slide is less is more. So sometimes people cram too much stuff on their resume. I definitely was guilty of that. At one point in my career, I tried to cram too much stuff on my resume, less words, just hit the key points. And in your interview as well. Sometimes you want to talk too much. People want to talk too much. And you're nervous during interviews, but you kind of want to listen. You want to listen during the interview as much as you can. Listen to the questions. Listen to the direction of the questions. They're made up in their mind to hire you, but you talk too much, and then you start slipping. Then the person who wants to hire you is like, oh, wait a minute, this person is like a little bit, he's showboating, he's talking too much, he's telling me, he's bragging about himself, he's not humble enough. So sometimes less is more. All right, let me run through these, and if I don't have time for questions, please send them to me on LinkedIn, and I will just put here in the chat my email address, because now I've set up LinkedIn, that you have to know my email address to connect with me. Let's see. So this is my email address, alex.chen@bytedance.com. So, oops, went to private. Let's see. I need to get out of private. I need to go to everyone. There we go, everyone. So chen@bytedance.com. So yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my email address. You need that email address to connect with me. So let me go through, I've got 6 minutes. So let me go through these. So soft skills are very, very important, especially for Gen Z and Gen Y, because everybody's texting, right? Everybody's on email, and they don't have as many personal relationships before. I heard of one dad that he only talks to his daughter by text messages, not even in person, even though they're sitting 6 feet apart or one room apart. So it's soft skills, build them up, develop them. Talking skills, talk to people, go biking, go, even Zoom calls, right? And everyone's staying at home, COVID-19. Try to build up your soft skills, because when you see people, there's a tremendous amount of information that you're getting from people through observing people. So that means listening better, be fun to work with, self-awareness. There's a lot in self-awareness. So think about that. How do people perceive you? And everything that you say, everything you do is either confirming an image they have of you or you're trying to change it. So think about your brand. What is your brand? What are the 3 words that people think of when they mention your name to other people in your company? And you have to be your own PR team. So you have to think about how to carefully manage your your image, your brand and companies. Nobody else is going to do it except you. Again, executive presence. So that's how you show up in meetings. Are you complaining about things? Are you managing your frustration? Are you getting your, if things don't go your way, how do you manage that? Be open to feedback. Yeah, so people naturally get defensive, right? They hear some feedback. And so both at Facebook and at TikTok, everybody gives tons of feedback. There's just tons and tons of 360 feedback all the time. So it's advice. It's advice coming to you. It's not criticism. Think about that. It's advice. Yeah, so be open. Just, be open and humble. Actually, we have, so at TikTok, we have these 6 stickers and these they call them bite style. So one of them is be open and humble. And so listen to people, get their feedback, try to improve. And I think it'll serve you well, because if you have ego, if you have pride, you're not going to hear people's feedback, and all feedback is good. So this is another important thing: invest in relationships, not projects. I learned this probably a little too late, and I learned it, although it served me well at Disney. So every relationship in a company is important. Every relationship, and whether they're managers, mentors, sponsors, advocates, and allies. So these are people, there's actually people that are looking out for you. They like you. There's people at company that like you, your personality, things you do, maybe they think you're funny. So these are people that will help you, take advantage of that, cultivate those relationships, work those relationships, invest in them, spend time with people that are looking out for you, people who are friendly to you. You try to help them and they'll try to help you. So work with that. Managers, mentors, every relationship is important. Learn this big lesson: never argue in emails. Okay, you're never going to prove you're right. No one is ever going to. It's seldom where people are like, hey, sorry, you're right. Especially if you're arguing with your peers or someone above. So just be careful of that. Try to talk to people in person and try to be respectful in emails. You never know how emails are going to be taken. So never argue. If you have a disagreement, try to pick up the phone, schedule a Zoom call. And if your manager only sees your weaknesses and you keep improving things, you're achieving things you think you're doing, you're accomplishing things, and the manager doesn't see it, maybe it's time to move on. Growth mindset, so always be curious, always be open to learn. That goes with the humble, and take ownership. This is your career. It's not anybody else's career. You don't have to copy anybody else. This is your own career, so be proactive, ask questions. So real quick, these 2 brothers, they both founded startups that were sold for $1 billion. Justin Kang and Dan Kang. One invented Twitch, one invented Cruise, and they both sold them for $1 billion. And there's a 3rd brother, and I don't know what he's done, but can you imagine Thanksgiving with his mom? Like, you got 2 brothers that made $1 billion, and here's the other brother. Anyway, so both of them said, ask questions, ask people for advice. It's a good time to invest in your career. So think about what your career, what's going on in your career, how you want to map things out. Friday afternoon is a good time to do it. So last career tip, 5 out of 5. So network, we talked about that. Always accept new work. I made this mistake too. I want to pass it on to you. Never say you're too busy. You always want to accept new projects. You can always take on the new project and then tell your manager you want to hire somebody under you to handle other things. So you want to accept new responsibilities and new work. And try to interview every year, because people sometimes they're stuck at the same job for 5 or 10 years and they forget how to interview. They forget what their resume looks like. So think about that. Try to interview every year. And these are some books that I would recommend reading. I've read these, and each of these. Psychology of Winning is great. I grew up reading that. And What Got You Here Won't Get You There. There's a chapter on listening there, on listening in that book. I think it's chapter 12 or chapter 13. It's pure gold. Read that chapter. Making of a Manager, if you're thinking about becoming a manager, or thinking about if you are a manager and you're struggling, that's a great book to read. Right of a Lifetime, Ambition. And Bob Iger is always eager to learn. This guy is just, if you ever meet him, he's always eager to learn. And that is it. We've at the time. So thank you, Renata. Thank you, everybody. And connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
Thank you, Alex, for the great presentation. Thank you, everybody who joined. This is the last career event for the year, so thanks for all your support throughout the year. You guys all have my email, so if you have ideas for the next year events, I'm already planning for some events in January, February. Feel free to shoot me an email. I think everybody received my email, and it's also in the newsletter. So thank you. Have a great holiday season, and hoping to continue to engage with the University of Michigan community in 2021.
Oh, one thing, Renata, is the recording. Do you think that the recording will be available after
Yes.
to the people
Yeah,
here?
the recording will be available for who joined the call. Yeah, going to happen next week.
Okay. Do I need to do anything as the host for the recording, or?
No, I think we're good.
Or you got it. You've got it handled on your side.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.